Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, yes, thanks for having me here today. So I'm here today to talk about our work, to talk a bit about furniture poverty in general, and some insight into some of the ways you can support people to move out of furniture poverty. So I head up End Furniture Poverty, just a bit about who we are. We're the campaigning arm of a much bigger group of charities called FRC Group, which was founded over 35 years ago. And End Furniture Poverty is here to raise awareness of furniture poverty, but also to campaign for national solutions. At the moment, we're very much focusing on the provision of furnished tenancies in social housing and adequately funded local welfare schemes, which is local authority discretionary crisis support. On the slide here, you can see our definition of furniture poverty: the inability to afford or access basic furniture, appliances and furnishings that provide a household with a socially acceptable standard of living. So we include appliances and floor and window coverings in that definition, and there's a full list of the essential items on our website, but it's the items you'd expect, from sofas and beds to cookers and fridges. Furniture poverty is a continuum, so there are varying degrees, from furniture insecurity at one end through to furniture destitution, where someone has few or none of the basic items that they need. Typically, this could be someone fleeing domestic abuse or coming from homelessness or moving out of temporary accommodation, and too many of these people are being moved into empty boxes. So we published a report, to be honest, it was a couple of years ago now, and it showed that at least 6 million people, 9% of the UK population, live in furniture poverty. And that includes 26% of social housing tenants. And over 1 million adults are living in what we're calling deep furniture poverty, where they're living without 3 or more essential items. And that includes 8% of social housing tenants. And a final stark figure there, at least 740,000 children in the UK living without a bed of their own to sleep in. And it's clear the number of people living in furniture poverty will have risen even higher during the cost of living crisis, because if food bank usage is rising, furniture poverty is rising, because if you can't afford food, how on earth can you afford to replace a broken cooker? For those on low incomes, furniture and white goods are likely to be some of the most expensive items that they need to buy, and trying to do so can mean people abandon social tenancies to return to furnished properties in the private rental sector, or people turn to debt to acquire items, which can often be high-cost credit or even doorstep lenders or loan sharks. This can all leave them unable to pay their rent, leading to rental arrears and tenancy failure, leaving them unable to afford food, or it just means people live without beds, cookers and fridges. And here are some of the health impacts: living without a bed, unable to get a good night's sleep; living without a cooker or a fridge, unable to store and prepare fresh food or store medication. And furniture poverty also affects your mental health and your social and financial well-being. You're far less likely to invite someone into your home if you haven't got a sofa for them to sit on. All of these findings are part of the secondary survey of that extension furniture poverty research, and it's all on our website. As you can see, the impacts are really severe. And as furniture poverty is rising, these problems are increasing, with all the associated costs to the public purse on the NHS, on social care and more, plus, of course, the personal toll on people's lives. So at the end of the day, furniture poverty is about poverty. It's about people not having enough money to meet their basic needs. And as we all know, everything's become so much harder, not just for those living on the low incomes, but for those who are trying to help them, who are trying to support them and trying to make limited budgets stretch much further. I'll talk about furnished tenancies shortly, but starting with local welfare schemes. As I said, these are local authority discretionary crisis support. Lots of local authorities have different names for them. They can be ideal for people who need 1 or 2 furniture items. They provide support for food and fuel, and typically furniture and appliances. We publish a report every year looking at the state of play for local welfare across the UK. We do a freedom of information request to every local authority. Our last report found that 36 English local authorities have closed their local welfare assistance scheme, and that's left over 15 million people in England without access to local welfare. We also found that the majority of local welfare funding is now coming from the Household Support Fund, and we know that 1 in 5 local authorities face significant financial difficulties, and because local welfare is not a statutory service, it's under serious threat. The Household Support Fund has been extended to March 2026, which is great, and we're very grateful. Without it, we think local welfare would have vanished across over half of England, but we really do need a long-term solution. We've got a report coming out in a few days that we've written with the Children's Society, Trussell Trust, Joseph Rowntree Foundation and others, which looks at what the long-term future for local authority crisis support should be. We've got a meeting with the DWP tomorrow to discuss it. And just to be clear, the report looks at all of the nations, but England is the one with the most that faces the most difficulties. In Scotland, it's a statutory service, it's centrally run, and in Wales and Northern Ireland, it's centrally run. All of those schemes are far better funded than the support that's available in England. We've published a cost-benefit analysis report to demonstrate to the DWP the value of crisis support, and it demonstrates the significant benefits that these schemes bring to the local authority and beyond. So every pound invested in local welfare, we found, has a return of around £11.50 to the local authority and returns over £15 across the public purse. So it's a really significant return on investment, and that report's on our website as well. Furniture reuse schemes are very, very important. I'm a trustee of the reuse network, so I'm a passionate advocate for reuse. But we do have to be realistic about the quality and quantity of furniture available through reuse, and all of the challenges around safety, PAT testing, fire labels, the cost of logistics and cleaning. It's not a free option. Many of the grant-making charities who provide support with furniture and appliances was absolutely battered during COVID and then the cost of living crisis. Some have closed, some are limiting their offer due to geography or in other ways. And furniture gifting schemes, some housing associations, for example, have furniture gifting schemes, really, really important, but reliant on shrinking budgets. So the routes out of furniture poverty are very challenging, and they are becoming much harder to navigate. We believe a blended approach is the solution. So furnished tenancies for those who are on benefits and likely to remain on benefits for at least short to medium term. And then reuse and gifting schemes for those who just need perhaps one or two items. So on to social housing. It's standard practice in the social housing sector for properties to be allocated as unfurnished, which means no furniture, no appliances, and usually no floor or window coverings either. Only 2% of social homes are provided as furnished compared to 29% in the private rental sector. And for many tenants, that's fine. That's what they want. They've already acquired their furniture and appliances. But for some, particularly some of those groups I mentioned earlier, those fleeing domestic abuse, coming from homelessness, or even moving from the private rental sector where the property may have been furnished, they can have absolutely nothing. And that creates huge challenges for the start of a new tenants. We believe at least 10% of social housing tenants would really benefit from a furnished tenancy scheme. And for us, a furnished tenancy scheme means offering people a choice of all of those essential items. So a bed, bedroom storage, like a wardrobe, chest of drawers, sofa, table and chairs, cooker, fridge, freezer and washing machine. They might not need all of those items, so they shouldn't have to take them all, but they should be offered them all. And I know that the social housing sector does do a fantastic job of helping people to move on with their lives, to move off benefits and move into employment. But I do think we have to be honest about that cohort of tenants who are on benefits and likely to remain on benefits for at least a little while. And for those, a furnished tenancy is ideal. It offers them everything they need, as well as the peace of mind of knowing that when it needs replacing, it's covered. The cost-benefit analysis study I mentioned earlier also looked at furnished tenancies and found that they provide significant returns to the tenant, at the very least cost neutral for the landlord, and it doubles the state investment. So I've said furnished tenancies, they're not right for every tenant, but they can be an ideal solution for some. The cost of the furniture is paid for through the service charge element of universal credit, so the landlord recoups their costs. For a single person, for example, the typical charge is about £20 per week. But of course, the tenant isn't paying that. The benefits are. Just as if they rented a furnished property in the private rental sector, the rent would likely be higher, which would be covered by benefits. In fact, actually, some existing furnished tenancy schemes say up to 10% of their furnished tenancy tenants are actually in employment and pay the service charge themselves. They just find it more convenient. But they're very much in the minority. The majority are on benefits, and those benefits cover those furniture costs. And we think there's a really persuasive argument for social landlords to provide furnished tenancies beyond the benefits of wanting to help their tenants, which I know is so important. But Those better living conditions for tenants can reduce turnover. Tenancies can end for all sorts of reasons, but having a furnished home can make a really big difference. And those sustained tenancies means sustained rental income and therefore reduced void costs as well. And tenants won't have had to turn to high cost credit to acquire items, so it can reduce rental arrears too. Furnished tenancies can make hard to let properties more attractive, help to compete with the private rental sector and make allocations easier. And those longer tenancies can create more sustainable communities, which can have an impact on safety, reduced crime and better living standards. And in fact, those with long-running furnished tenancy schemes tell us that they can also generate a surplus, which can be then reinvested to expand the scheme or to provide support for tenants in other ways. And here are some of the benefits for the tenant. They're moving into a home, not an empty box. They've got all the items they need and that peace of mind of knowing that everything's covered. They've got somewhere comfortable to sleep, somewhere safe to store their food and to cook it, somewhere to sit and relax and invite family and friends into their home. Tenants in furnished properties are more likely to engage with support services, so health visitors, social workers, housing officers. As I've said, you're far more likely to invite someone into your home if you've got a sofa for them to sit on. And tenants won't build up unmanageable debt trying to furnish it themselves or turn to loan sharks or doorstep lenders. Far from being a poverty trap, providing somebody with a furnished tenancy, which is something that some landlords have expressed concerns about, they allow tenants to move forward with their lives, to get into a position where they can lift their head and start thinking about next steps, looking at training and employment opportunities. And providing furniture in this way doesn't just have to be for new tenants. There are more traditional furnished tenancies made at the start of a tenancy where you're furnishing the property and not the tenant. But there are also furniture rental agreements, addendums or variations to tenancy agreements where you're furnishing the tenant. So those furniture rental agreements can be used for existing tenants and even for tenants who only need one or two items. Gen 2 in the North East, they offer furniture rental agreements in this way to their tenants, for example. There are different options when it comes to acquiring the furniture too. The capital route means the landlord buys the furniture and then looks to recoup that capital outlay, usually over 3 to 5 years. And to set the service charge, you would factor in your capital costs and then an element for repairs and replacements and then your admin costs. We've produced a blueprint for furniture provision in social housing on our website. It's freely available. It has lots of guidance in there of the things you need to think about when it comes to setting up a furnished tenancy scheme. There's also a detailed spreadsheet where you can look at the different financial models as well as expected returns. Once that 3 to 5 year period is up and you've recouped that capital cost, you continue to claim the service charge because you're providing an ongoing service. Some landlords offer fixed renewal programs for furniture and others replace it as and when required. With the rental route, the landlord rents the furniture from a provider, supplies it to the tenant, and then the landlord can still add on an admin element to the service charge. So there's no capital outlay, but be aware there will be less surplus in the long term for the landlord. Some landlords I know do have concerns about an ongoing rental service and ongoing rental charges, but you're paying for that ongoing service, so all those repairs and replacements, for example. And just as a tenant wouldn't rent a property and expect to own it after 20 years because they will have had perhaps a new boiler, new windows, new roof, whatever, it's exactly the same model. Whether you go down the capital route or the rental route, you can allow tenants to return items to reduce their service charge should their circumstances change, if they come off benefits, for example. But that is more common with rental agreements because you don't have to worry about the capital return. And providing furniture to tenants who need it, some of the added benefits here from some of the landlords that we spoke to associated with the tenants' improved financial stability. So those reduced rental arrears, tenancy sustainability. We can see here Citizen reduced their churn from 30 to 50%. 13 Group have had some really impressive returns. So their rental arrears fell from by 30% from 7 million to 4.8 million. And they say their void costs reduced by an average of £500 per property because they say tenants looked after the properties better because they were given a home and not an empty box. Onward Homes, they've said that they think their void costs average at £8,000 to £10,000 per property. So they've been providing a group of particularly vulnerable tenants with a gifted package of furniture, which was £4,000 a package. They say it was still saving them money because it was still cheaper than the voids. This was a group of tenants who usually have a high failure rate for those tenancies, and they found their sustainment rate stayed around 97.6%, so really, really hard. They're now moving on to introduce furnished tenancies as well, though, in addition, through Furniture Flex. So I'll just tell you about Furniture Flex. In order to support landlords as much as we could, we've worked with our colleagues in FRC, our sister charity, to develop a new way for landlords to procure the furniture. So we spoke to so many landlords over the years about furniture provision, about the concerns and the barriers and the issues that they have. So Furniture Flex has been specifically designed to overcome, hopefully, all of those barriers. So landlords who are worried about having the capital funding to start up a scheme can go down the rental route, so they can rent the furniture, so it requires no capital outlay. Those who are worried about tenants whose circumstances may change if they move off benefits can be reassured the tenants can simply return the items and the service charge is removed within a week. So they can return the items one by one as they save up enough, or they can return them all in one go. Fears of an admin burden have been alleviated by an enhanced support package offered, including a really simple landlord-tenant online portal to manage the furniture packs, although, of course, tenants can use the phone as well. We understand many tenants are in digital poverty, so phone calls are still available. Tenants can be offered a single item all the way up to a full furniture package and everything in between, and it's for new and existing tenants. And if a landlord raises a fresh concern, a fresh barrier that we haven't thought of, we'll go away and do what we can to adapt the scheme, to amend it, to deal with that as well. The key here is flexibility. The key here is ending furniture poverty. And the last point on this slide, it's a sentiment I've genuinely heard so many times as we've introduced Furniture Flex to landlords. It's a no-brainer. There are some possible quick wins, though. We've been lobbying landlords as a starting point to leave good quality flooring in place for incoming tenants. The majority rip it out, something which those outside the sector find horrifying and wasteful, as do we. We know there are at least 1.2 million people living without flooring, and 61% of those live in social housing. One social housing tenant said to me, "It's cement downstairs and upstairs it's wood and not lots of nails sticking out. It's a hazard. It's really not ideal. I have a young child." So we want landlords to look at their policies and start leaving any decent flooring in them. Ideally, follow 13 Group's excellent example and install flooring in all relets. I did meet with the Decent Home Standard policy team a couple of weeks ago. They're seriously looking at flooring in the new standard. So I'm confident that it's coming. We're hopeful that it's coming. Living without flooring is uncomfortable. It means your home's less energy efficient and insulated. It can be dangerous for families with young children, elderly people, or those with disabilities. It can create noise issues in flats. So for a start, where possible, clean flooring and leave it in place for incoming tenants. We've also got case studies with landlords providing flooring that we're sharing across the sector to highlight the benefits, again, for the tenant and landlord, to encourage them to do more. We know that the small minority of grant-giving charities that provide flooring, well, first of all, we know there's very few of them, but we also know that most of their applications come from social housing tenants. We would also ask landlords to leave window coverings in too, where appropriate. So these may be much lower cost for the tenant, but there's still a cost which could still be unaffordable for some. Plus, tenant requires, tools and some skills to install. So all of this work is part of a national campaign that we're running called Make a House a Home. So we're meeting with, I've met with lots of MPs. I've got a drop-in event for MPs next week. We've got over 30 MPs and a couple of Lords coming and a minister or two. We're speaking to policymakers to ask for that 10% target, 10% of social homes to be let as furnished, to be mandatory. I've met with Rushanara Ali, the Homeless Minister in MHCLG, to talk about including this in the Decent Home Standard. And as I say, when I met with the Decent Home Standard Policy Review team about flooring, I did turn the conversation to furnished tenancies as well. Full details of the campaign are on our website. So all of those of you today who work for a social landlord, do get in touch with us. We're here to help you look at setting up a scheme. We can introduce you to Furniture Flex, or we can just help you explore it and have a general conversation. It's all free. It's what we're here to do. And if there's anyone on here who works with a social landlord, just introduce me to them and I'll have that conversation with them. We also do have 2 live surveys at the moment to find out what support is available for survivors of domestic abuse. We've got one for organisations and support workers and one for survivors. I'd be very grateful if that's relevant for anyone here today to have a look at that and fill it in. I'll pop the links in the chat. And we're planning to hold a roundtable event on this in Parliament in May. So the links to everything I've talked about today are here, which you probably can't see, but everything's on the website, or just email me. I'll put my email address in the chat as well. On our website as well, we've got a local welfare assistance finder, so we've got direct links to every local authority, local welfare scheme where one exists, of course, and we've also got links to Household Support Fund offers as well. So that's it from me.